So, I've been thinking about just like discussions people have about gaming online, and this one thing keeps coming up in every just like every kind of game, especially MMOs, and that's casual gamers and hardcore gamers, and because of the conversation, people also like mention mid-core, whatever that means. And I guess it always kind of frustrates me because I feel like every single person has their own kind of way that they define those things. And I feel like in a lot of cases it's just kind of like code for like the difficulty, I guess. And I don't know, people talk about difficulty so much in video games. So I kind of wanted to just chat about that and like how I feel about it. And I know like I'm going to mention how I feel about them and how I kind of define them. And I know that's not really going to solve anything because I'm just doing what I'm accusing everybody else of doing. But here we are. This is my YouTube channel, so let's talk about it. And what I really kind of wanted to touch on is like, I feel like I am a casual player in Final Fantasy. And you might look at my character and be like, hey, you've done Ultimates, you have the Necromancer title. Those are things that hardcore players do. That's content made for hardcore players. So I must be a hardcore player. But I don't feel that way. Because I don't feel like it has anything to do with the content that you're able to complete. I feel like it's more of how you approach the game and how you are organizing your life around the game. So what I mean by that is, if I am making changes to my life to accommodate the game, to me, that sounds like you are leaning more towards being a hardcore player. And if you're just playing the game when you feel like it, when you got some free time, then you are leaning towards being a casual gamer. And me, I play the game when I feel like it and when I have time. Now, I lean, I think, a little bit in the opposite direction because, like, there are things in the game that I feel like I have to get done. Like, right now, the Savage tier is still fairly new, and I feel like I have to get my re-clears in. So, every Tuesday, that becomes a little bit of a priority. I'm like, okay, Tuesday's the reset. I'm going to prioritize logging into the game and re-clearing the Savage tier. But at the same time, I'm not setting a set time for me to do that. I do it when I'm able to. I'm not organizing me and 7 other people's schedules so we all align and meeting at the same time in order to do content. I don't have a static. I feel like if you're blocking off a set of time, and 7 other people are blocking off the same set of time, and you're all committed to a particular time. In other words, if you have a static, I feel like you're leaning a little bit more towards the hardcore. Because you're now starting to organize at least a small part of your life around the game. And I'm not trying to say any of this is good or bad. Play the game how you want to play the game. I play the game often because I have a decent amount of leisure time that I can do whatever I want, and usually that turns out to be Final Fantasy. So I feel like I'm more casual, and the content that I do while I'm doing that doesn't matter, because the hardest piece of content that I've done is DSR, And a lot of people would say, well, if you've cleared DSR, you're a hardcore player. But the way I attacked DSR was casual. If I had some free time, I would go into Party Finder and I would prog it. And eventually, I cleared the fight. You know, it took me like 3 months or something, but I cleared the fight. And so, like, here's another interesting kind of interaction. When I was progging UCOB, The Unending Coils of Bahamut, I ran into a bunch of players, and one person that I ran into while progging that was a guy who I kind of became friends with, and we chatted a little bit. And he was telling me about his plans for the upcoming Savage tier. I think that was the 3rd tier, Anabasios in Endwalker. I might be misremembering, but he was telling me about his plans for that, and he had hardcore plans. He was going to, he had made a static that was planning on doing it like 8 hours a day, going for a week 1 clear. He wanted to hit it really hard. He was organizing his life around hitting the Savage tier super hard and just destroying the Savage tier. I would describe him as a hardcore player. Now me, at the time, I didn't have a static, and I wasn't like super motivated to do a lot, so I was like, you know, I'm gonna jump into the Savage tier. I like doing it, so of course I'm gonna do it. But I was just like, whatever happens, happens. And the first week I cleared the first fight was at P9S. And after progging P9S, I was like, that's as much progging as I feel like doing for the week. So I just won't even step into P10, and that was it. You know, I cleared 1 fight. My friend, his static exploded after the first day. Like they just disbanded after the first day, and so he ended up not clearing anything the first week. And so I ended up clearing more than that guy, even though I would still define him as a hardcore player, because he's going at it from a hardcore perspective. He's trying really hard. He's devoting a lot of time to it. And I still define me as a softcore or a casual player, because I'm just kind of doing it when I feel like it. And that's kind of how I feel about everything in the game, because everything in Final Fantasy is very accessible. I think people start gatekeeping certain content and start being like, well, this content over here is made for the hardcore players, and this content over here is made for the casual players. You know, like people in Final Fantasy, people would say Ultimates are made for the hardcore players, and Island Sanctuary is made for the casual players, right? But I feel like casual is too often code for easy. I feel like accessible is often code for easy. But in Final Fantasy, I feel like everything is pretty accessible. Like there's no hardcore requirement for me to go into Savage, right? Like I can buy minimum item level off the auction house and just jump into Savage, and I'd be fine. I didn't even do that. I only had like 2 crafted pieces, and a friend crafted that for me, and the rest of the gear I got just playing the game. In this Savage tier, at least. And most of the hardcore players that I've met that are doing ultimates, that are doing, you know, Savage and whatnot, they're also doing the casual content. You know, they're also completing the Island Sanctuary. They're doing the same stuff everyone else is doing. So I just feel like this whole conversation is so weird, and how people section off different pieces of content when you can really do everything in the game, from both a hardcore or a casual perspective, you know? Going back to the Island Sanctuary thing, like I know lots of people were like looking up these spreadsheets to min-max and farm efficiently the Island Sanctuary, and they were spending, 8 hours a day in the Island Sanctuary when it first came out. And they were approaching the Island Sanctuary in a, hardcore fashion, because they're planning around it, right? And then there's me, who is just like, I don't know, I wandered around the island a little bit, I picked some herbs or whatever, and if a NPC asked me to do something, I'd be like, I guess I could look for that. And then I left. My Island Sanctuary is rank, I don't know, I think it's still the highest rank. I eventually got there, but I just kind of, meandered around it. And that's kind of how I feel like I'm approaching a lot of content. I'm just kind of like, if I feel like doing it, I'll do it, and if I don't, I don't. So I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. I want to hear how you guys define hardcore and casual. Is it the content that you do? Is it the amount of your life that you organize around it? I'm leaning toward what I just said. I'm leaning toward, if you're organizing your life and making changes in your life around the game, I feel like you're leaning more towards hardcore. And if you're just playing when you're playing and you're just doing what you feel like doing, whether that's Ultimate or whether that's Island Sanctuary, I think you're leaning towards casual. What do you think? Let me know.